Okay, now first of all, if I could come to you, David, you are in partnership with EasyGo. This is a new partnership, and maybe you could explain to us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Tritium make DC fast chargers globally, and we work through partners, and in Ireland we've selected EasyGo as one of our key partners, who not only takes the charger and becomes a charge point operator, but also services the charger for us, and has to go through a very intensive accreditation training program and licensing program to make sure that his staff are up to the level that we expect, to make sure that our product is kept under warranty and at a really high level of efficiency.
Okay, and Chris, could I ask you a bit about some of the work you're doing as well in the county councils and what you're rolling out?
Yeah, absolutely. So along with the fast charging for the network itself, we're working with the councils to find the areas where charging is needed. We partnered with Air to remove phone boxes from the street. We signed a deal with them last year to use that space because the phone boxes are not any use to anybody anymore. They're not being used, they're an eyesore, and people don't want them in the vicinity of the towns. So we've said, look, we can take over that space and we'll fit a charge point on it. And find the sites that are suitable for people to actually park up, find something to do, as in go shopping, have something to eat in a safe place, and charge their car while they're there for 20, 30, 40 minutes.
It's an excellent idea because the phone boxes are just literally something that are now redundant at this stage.
They are, and you know, Air own those sites, Air have those sites, they have to make use of them. So it made perfect sense for the out with the old and in with the new, and just use that technology and space, the technology of the chargers, and utilising the space that Air have to be able to facilitate this for the public.
One of the things we've heard constantly here today is the infrastructure. It seems to be the key thing. And no matter how good the cars get and the batteries get and the range get, people still have this worry. And I mean, we've spoke about it so many times about the long journeys they do or how they're going to plan all of those things. David, in terms of sort of, if we were to sort of look ahead to the next 12, 24 months, what do we really need to be doing to sort of start to really alleviate these concerns for people?
Yeah, I think infrastructure is obviously very, very key. There's probably, let's call it, 3 different areas of the infrastructure. One is the residential market, so you can charge at home. The other is the destination charging, where you can charge when you arrive somewhere, and also on-the-go charging. So what's really important is that there is infrastructure everywhere. Residential charging is great when you have a drive or you have somewhere that you can charge your car, and not all of us have a drive, so therefore we're tending to look for other areas that we can charge. So that's normally somewhere where you want not 8 hours overnight charging, you want quite fast charging. So that normally lends itself to move away from AC charging to DC charging. So therefore to put in the infrastructure for DC charging is obviously very important. Now, as battery ranges get longer and we can charge the car, you know, for a reasonable amount of kilometers, that's okay. But of course, the cost of the batteries are high. And what I believe we will see in the future is, and we've got OEMs here, so maybe they can answer this question, is that they won't want to get to 1,000 kilometers and 2,000 kilometers. They'll basically reduce the battery down to a more economical value so that more people can buy electrical cars, because that's what we need, okay? And then we need the infrastructure, and most of us as drivers only really want to drive maximum 3 hours before we stop for a coffee for health and safety reasons. So you need to look at the infrastructure and the motorway connection services and really map out where drivers need to be. So the infrastructure needs to be where car drivers want them to be, which is either on the go or at the destination when they get there. And then just again, when we talk about infrastructure and in terms of the power, there's a lot of people talking about we need bigger and bigger and more power in the infrastructure, like 300 kilowatts, 400 kilowatts. And in actual fact, when you look at the capacity of a car to charge, most of them start at 50 kilowatts, even up to the maximum of a Porsche Taycan at 260 kilowatts. And not a lot of us drive Porsche Taycans, okay? But the average car, drivers through range anxiety want to get a charger around 20-30% of charge left in the car. And actually, when you charge the car to around 80% through the charge curve, from 80 to 100 is quite slow. So most people charge between 30 and 80%. And they want to do that, quite fast. But also when they get there, they want to have availability. So as a CPO, as EasyGo and doing an installation, if you've one 400 kilowatt charger, it's better to have 4 100 kilowatt chargers with 2 leads on either side so you can evade cars, because people want availability. They want to know when they get there, they can charge, and they've got a space to charge the car. So for me, it's about the location, the dwell time, the availability, and of course that the chargers work when you're there. The reliability.
Yeah, and essentially these add up to people not having to think twice about driving an EV. That's it really, what we were talking about earlier. This idea that if I'm going down the country in a petrol or diesel car, I don't check out where I can fill it. And we need the same ease. And that threshold of moving from an ICE car to an EV has to be so low that people don't even think twice about it. So, Chris, you obviously feel the same way. But how do we almost retrain people? Because we've told them for ages that the range is getting better on cars, that somehow that they need all this range, but they actually don't. If you have a good infrastructure, you can cope with a much smaller battery, which is cheaper to run and has a smaller range, because you can charge it there. So, how do we start to re-educate people now about the way they actually perceive range?
Yeah, so Ireland is probably one of the best countries in the world to run an EV. We're a small island. From Dublin, you can drive anywhere in the country these days with the technology that's there in the new cars and the size of the batteries. As David mentioned, you can't drive for longer than 3 hours without stopping anywhere. So as an EV driver, I found that the places that I stop are the places where there's a charger. And that's where, I stop, I get my tea and have my 20-minute break, 30-minute break, charge up, and it brings me to where I need to go. And that's what we look at as a business and what we're rolling out with the charge points. We're looking at the areas where people are moving around, and to be able to give that bit of comfort, that people know that when I go to a town, there is a fast charger there. Where there's power, we want to put in the maximum amount of chargers we can to avail of that power. As David said, there's no point in having one charge point that can charge at 400 kilowatt hours, because it doesn't make sense to have one car charging. Why not have it so that you can have up to 8 cars charging and utilizing that power? Because then everybody can move on at the same time. But when you get there, you're not joining a queue. You're actually charging while you're sitting there waiting. Because you don't know how long that next person is going to be there. You don't know how long you're going to be sitting there. And then you don't know if that person actually is going to come back to their car if they've left it. So you don't know how long you're going to be sitting there. So we think it's important to put out a lot of smaller fast chargers than it is to put out the very, very large charging individual chargers. And charging hubs will be key. But I think there's lots of space for a lot of different charging solutions that can give drivers the comfort when they're traveling around the country.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, is that there are different solutions, because I think I get a lot of this from people who haven't got EVs and are thinking about going EV, but they say, oh, but you can't charge them in like 5 minutes or 6 minutes, so that's necessarily the thing they need. But trying to explain to them, you don't. You just need somewhere where you can top up 20 or 30% and go. So I think that whole idea, it's going to be very difficult to sort of educate people about that, and I don't know where the role of that comes from, whether it's the SEAI or whether it's the dealerships, just about that approach that they don't need that many fast chargers.
Which you don't. The statistics out there are that, and this is across Europe, people spend less than 30 minutes at a fast charge point. And we see that across all of the statistics that we gather. People do not spend any more than 30 minutes at a fast charge point unless they really need it. But the average time is under 30 minutes.
And in that time, they can have a cup of coffee or they can do
Exactly,
whatever. And
yes.
most people stop anyway when they're doing these journeys. But it is a matter of just trying to educate people, as I said, about that and about their expectations. And I think that is the difficulty. But also I think it's just the visibility of chargers is an issue, because I know the SAI did a survey, now I think it's about 2 years old, but at the time most people completely overestimated the time it takes to charge a car and couldn't actually name where their nearest charger was, a site or location of their own, the nearest charger. So I think the more people who drive electric cars, the more people know people who have them, that might make a difference. But I think there is still this need to visibly see them in the same way as we see. I know we don't need as many as we need filling stations, but we definitely do need a very public presence for chargers.
Yeah, but actually, what we've actually also found is that, and speaking to many of our other customers around the world, whether it's in America or Australia or in Europe, charge point operators, what they see is that you put the infrastructure in place and no one uses it for a while. Then eventually it builds up and the utilization builds up. And what they can actually see for the charging profile is that it's the same customers who come. And what we've even found is it's the same customers who actually use a certain charger. If you have a bank of 4 chargers, there's a customer and they'll always go to charger number 3. And we looked at this and we asked the research, well, actually we are creatures of habit. Right? We find somewhere we like, the coffee's good or whatever's good. And we spoke to one customer and we said, why do you always go to that specific station? And they said, well, I go there at 1 o'clock because there's a tree and it's shaded from the sun and I can sit and read my emails in my car. Well, I mean, when you're building a charging hub infrastructure, you don't sit and think about that. But this is people, we're creatures of habit. So, of course, we have to communicate where all the charging infrastructure is. And I don't know exactly what. I know EasyGo's got a website with some information. I know in the UK there's Zap Map and various things like this. So we need to communicate that. But then eventually we become creatures of habit. Of course, when we're planning longer journeys, which we do from time to time, you need to say, well, I'm going to stop here or here. But normally you do that as well when you're in the old ICE car. You would turn around and think, well, from me driving from the north to the south, by the way, I enjoy watching rugby, so I'll be coming, down to watch Ireland play rugby. I need to know where I can stop my car. And of course, I'll pull in and check where I can charge my car, and then it's easy. So just a little bit of planning. And that's it.
Chris, similarly for you, obviously the data that EasyGo has, does that allow you then predict where those chargers are needed? And do you map where you're going to put in fast chargers and put in various different chargers based on the usage now by people? And what does that data tell you? We do.
So the data is telling us at the moment that the towns around cities and the towns around the very larger towns and commuting distances. So anywhere within 20, 30 kilometres of a major employment area, we're tending to see a lot of EV pickup. We monitor the data all of the time. We monitor the usage, we use heat maps, but we also use, where the cars are sold as well. But apart from that, we've got to look at developing it further. For instance, we're putting charge points in Mayo, and we're putting 21 charge points in Mayo. So we're not just looking and thinking, okay, well, let's just hit the top 2 towns in Mayo for putting charge points into because it's financially viable. Let's have a chat with the council and see about putting the charge points in where it's going to serve the community best as well. Because it may not suit now, and some of the chargers may not have the usage now, but they will have the usage over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. And all of the projects that we're working on, they're long-term projects. We're looking at 10, 15, 20-year projects here. We're not looking at something for the next 3 or 4 years. So we're looking at building the infrastructure, and we're doing it county-by-county basis with the AIR project. Currently, we've got almost 80 sites lined up, ready to go, working with the councils. Some of them we've put live, some of them we're carrying out groundworks, but they're all at various stages. And we've a lot more to go with that. But yes, we could be clever and just sit back and say, let's just focus on Dublin, let's just focus on Cork. But no, we're saying, you know what? We're covering the island in charge points. And we've got the app. People can find the charge points on our app. We've got interoperability. People can start and stop charge points through our app, and they can see live status of the ESP chargers. They can see live status of Ionity charge points. But as David alluded to, a lot of it is to do with having what people are creatures of habit and just finding charge points that suit them on a location that suits them for a particular reason.
Certainly it seems to be what's key is outside of cities. That's constantly what I hear from people, is that they're fine once they're in an urban area, but the minute they venture out, they can't find, chargers, or there's very few chargers, and there are certainly appears to be particular pockets around the country that are really, really badly served. So they're the ones, and even if you only make that journey, once or twice a year, it's the bad stories that people remember, and they're the things we really need to avoid, because the same way as if the cars let you down or the range lets you down, as we alluded to earlier, these things happen, diesel and petrol cars break down, but if something goes wrong with an EV, this is the kind of news that travels an awful lot faster. So definitely outside of urban areas seems to be the key. But the future is good. They are going in, and we can look forward to being able to travel from one side of Ireland to the other with lots of fast chargers.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's very good.
That's good.
And I love this story so much about the change in the phone boxes from, we've all moved to mobile phones now, and we've got the phone boxes. Now we're replacing those with EV, and I guess we're going to see, the death of the ICE car moving to the EV car. And, my question is, what's going to happen with petrol stations?
Well, I think the plan for them is they'll be repurposed as mobility hubs and all sorts.
Great,
So
and you just answered my question. So we need this to happen faster. We need the infrastructure of the petrol forecourts to not just deliver petrol, but also deliver EV charging points as well, because most of them already have convenience stores. They're well lit. They're secure. I mean, you have to think about all these things as well, about security, safety, lighting. Convenience, and they have them, but we need to get them up and running quicker in terms of the infrastructure.
Okay, well, on that note, I'm going to have to call this one in. Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Chris. So the future is good. It's bright.
It is.
So we've
And
only
it's
on the
electric.
side of the road.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much to both of my panellists. Thanks.